I actually didn't meet Alexey till 2020 Sea Otter officially. Like I had known about him just from Instagram, and we one day I was out riding Pato, local
Yeah.
trail in Michigan, and this kid came whizzing by in a USA jersey on a bright teal Bianchi, and I was like, "Oh, that's that Alexey kid. I think he lives near here." I really needed mountain bike photos for my portfolio because I was still transitioning from BMX to mountain stuff. So I just shot him a message on Instagram. I
No way.
yeah, I looked at his profile and I was like, this kid looks like he might need some help. He didn't have that great of a feed, and I needed photos and videos, and he clearly needed some content, and I knew it would be a win-win. So it kind of just kept going from there on forward.
From KOM Cycling and Michigan Midpack Media, welcome to the Dirty Chain Podcast, the podcast that covers the cycling scene from the viewpoint of the Michigan Midpack. I'm your host, Trevor, and on this episode, cycling photographer and videographer Avery Stumm. Whether it's on his YouTube channel, Alexey and Avery, his amazing photos of athletes and cyclists, or, quite frankly, the majority of the content on Alexey Vermeulen's Instagram page, chances are you've come across the work of Avery Stumm. Avery has been killing it within the cycling industry in the last few years, and it seems like more and more I am seeing his name attached to all sorts of athletes and projects, least of which is his extremely successful partnership with pro cyclist and previous podcast guest, Alexey Vermeulen. I have been bugging Avery to jump on the podcast for a while now. And being an extremely busy person, Avery that is, we had finally nailed down a time that worked. And honestly, I'm glad that we waited this long, because I feel like I got him at peak Avery. I mean, the man just got back from shooting the Olympics, for God's sakes. My hope in this conversation was to hear about his background, originally from Michigan, his progression as a photographer, but what we got was so much more. We, of course, dive into all of that. But I think we also have a really cool conversation about the role and importance of outside, quote-unquote, creatives within the modern athlete's team, why someone like an Avery may be on the way to becoming the norm, but also why his role and partnership with Alexey is something truly unique and special. As a fan of cycling, and especially the American off-road scene, I get really excited about how things have exploded within the last few years. But I also understand that we, as consumers, we're so fortunate to live in this time where coverage and information is so instant and of such high quality that truly brings so much value to athletes and to the sport as a whole. It is the work of people like Avery that make all of this possible and enjoyable and entertaining for the rest of us, and that is exactly why I wanted to talk to him. So let's jump right into it. Cycling photographer and videographer Avery Stumm. Are you in Boulder?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Right down the road from Alexey.
You were out early this morning, right? Like 5 a.m. or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. I got up. I went and rode at 6. Yeah. My sleep schedule's still pretty messed up from Paris. So I just taking advantage of it. I normally would not ride that early.
Yeah. Like, we've been trying to schedule this thing for a while, but I was thinking maybe we'd like get you at a time where you're not as busy. But then I'm like, You were just at the Olympics and then
Yep.
Leadville. I'm assuming you were at Leadville, right?
Yep. Yeah, we landed from Paris about midnight on Wednesday, and then like Friday morning drove up to Leadville for the race. So
Goodness gracious.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a lot. I'd like to say we manage it well, but I'll just say we manage. Yeah.
It's not always that crazy though. You're not always like jumping time zones and well, time maybe.
No, it's not always that crazy. I mean, usually everything we do is, within the US. So not many Europe trips throughout the year, but when they do happen, they're usually pretty packed.
I do. Maybe we'll talk about the Olympics in a second, but I want to just jump right in because I mean,
Sure.
this is. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while.
Yeah.
And for sure, like run into you at Iceman. We see each other like
Yeah.
Sea Otter, and of course, like all your videos and stuff with Alexey.
Sure.
But I realize that as such an integral part of, you know, Alexey's brand and all of this
Sure.
content coming out. Um, I personally don't know a whole lot about you, and I'm
Right.
assuming most people don't know a whole lot about you, besides maybe what they see in the videos or.
Sure.
So I thought, you know, it'd be really cool to get to know you more and hear about how you got to this point, which I think is a pretty unique. I don't know. You're kind of in a very unique place. Maybe it's becoming less unique. We can talk about that in a little bit too.
Okay. Sure.
But yeah, give us a little background about Avery and how you got into this empty room in Boulder, Colorado. Extremely jet lagged from being in Paris at the Olympics into Leadville into now.
Ooh.
Like, how did you get started?
Yeah, that's a long story. Do we want to go into like more so how I started even with the whole camera thing?
I think
Is
so.
that
I mean, I think that's a pretty important part, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I thought I'd have a better answer for this by now because a lot of people ask me, but um, I guess it all started probably back in 2010 or so, maybe even younger than that. But I used to ride BMX, and we were always at the skate park, my friends and I, and kind of like a traditional skate park rat. Came from skateboarding before that. It was BMX for life. I never thought, I'd be on to mountain bikes or let alone road bikes wearing spandex, because that was not cool back then. But I've always been a pretty clumsy person myself, and I was always the one getting injured. I wasn't that talented at the skate park. Um, and one day I just thought, maybe this isn't for me, but I love the culture. All my friends are doing this. They were getting to a place where they were starting to get professional, and they needed a photo guy. So I thought photography was really cool. I always thought it could be a hobby of mine, but didn't know what that looked like. So one day I asked my parents for my first little point shoot camera. I don't even know how old I was then. I was probably 13 or something,
Okay.
28, 29 now as of a week ago. Um, and it just kind of all started there. I started shooting my friends at the skate park, doing their tricks and all so forth. And kind of just like this industry, everyone needs photos and videos to appease their sponsors. So I kind of just became that guy in the same way I became that guy for Alexey, just on much smaller wheels. Um, and then it just eventually advanced. There wasn't a whole lot of money in BMX. It was sort of a interesting time for the industry, in terms of sponsorship dollars and who's willing to pay for media and so on and so forth. So at that time, a lot of BMX riders were transitioning into mountain biking and mountain bike racing or slope style at the time, which is basically just bigger BMX. Um, and I thought maybe I'll give this a crack. So I got my first mountain bike. My dad took me out for a ride with him and his dad friends, and cocky 18-year-old Avery thought, oh, this is going to be easy, like a bunch of old man spandex, let's go. And they absolutely ruined my life on a gravel ride in Michigan. I was on a hardtail mountain bike, flat pedals. Um,
Do you remember?
and
Do you remember? Did they take you on a trail? Do you remember what trail it was?
No, it was just gravel roads
Just
out
gravel,
near
just
Grand
gravel
Lake,
ride. Yeah.
Michigan. Yep, yep. And it obliterated me, and it was a good thing because it actually lit the fire under me, and that was the thing that kind of made me fall in love. I said I never wanted to feel like this again, and I had a lot of fun. So that was kind of my like a light way of saying this is my introduction to bigger wheels, getting out of the skate park. And then from there, it just kind of one thing led to another. And then I slowly eased my way into the mountain bike scene, bigger wheels, road, gravel, you name it.
Yeah.
And shortly after that came Alexey.
So, and throughout all this, you're kind of developing your camera skills, I assume.
Sure.
Um,
Yep.
and was that something that like you studied in school, or was it just more so, uh, just
Yeah.
kind of?
Right. Yeah.
Tr-
No, I didn't study. Well, I did study it in school. And initially, it was all just, figuring it out, having fun, watching YouTube videos, joining my friends at the skate park, having a good time. And then when it came time to go to college, I went to my local community college without much direction of why I was going, more so just, you think you should go to college because that's what everyone's doing. So I spent 2 to 3 semesters. I was always traveling in between, and I did go into studying photography. I quickly realized it wasn't worth it for me. It it may work for a lot of people, but I had a talk with my professor at the time, and he said, "Look, you're already working. You're already doing the thing. I think you're going to get a lot better experience, and you're going to get a lot more out of just being in the industry. So don't acquire a bunch of more debt just to go do something you're already doing."
yeah.
Um, and then I quickly from there just kind of dropped on out and kept doing my thing.
So then, where does Alexi come into the picture here?
So yeah, this is actually a funny story because we're so directly associated now, and everyone assumes we've been friends like since childbirth. But I actually didn't meet Alexi till 2020 Sea Otter officially. Like I had known about him just from Instagram, and we one day I was out riding Pato, local trail in Michigan, and this kid came whizzing by in a USA jersey on a bright teal Bianchi, and I was like, "Oh, that's that Alexei kid. I think he lives near here." I really needed mountain bike photos for my portfolio because I was still transitioning from BMX to mountain stuff. So I just shot him a message on Instagram. I
No way.
yeah, I looked at his profile and I was like, this kid looks like he might need some help. He didn't have that great of a feed, and I needed photos and videos, and he clearly needed some content, and I knew it would be a win-win. So I dropped him a message on Instagram, said, "Let's go set up a shoot just for fun. You get content, I get what I need," and it kind of just kept going from there on forward. We met at Sea Otter right after that. That's like officially when it kind of started, and then came back home and did our shoot back in Michigan, and then had a good lunch after his Iceman win. And we just said like we should do this more often. And then 4 years later, people now interchange our names like no other, and I'm just directly associated with him.
I mean, your names are too close. Two
Mm.
A's,
The
it's
amount of times that someone texts me saying, "Hey, what races is Avery going to be at?" And I don't even correct them anymore because it's interchangeable at this point.
what capacity were you at Sea Otter in 2020 then? Were you shooting for other athletes or other brands? Like, is that what you were trying to kind of
Yeah.
get into? Just brand
Yeah,
photos
totally.
and things?
Seattle was one of those things at the time. Anytime I always tell people like when they're trying to get into media and an industry, and they always come to me and say like, "Well, how do I start?" And Sea Otter was one of those things where it's the biggest mountain bike festival, maybe in the world, arguably, obviously in America, where I knew there was that much racing, that many brands, just that many people in this one little area at the same time. And my best piece of advice is always just show up. So I knew that Sea Otter was an important place to be to network and make connections and so on and so forth. And a lot of people I knew were racing there. So I got a hold of my friend David, who I knew was driving his van out there, and slept in his van with him for the first Sea Otter. And the whole goal was just to mingle with people, understand the industry more. At the time, there was pretty good racing there before the Grand Prix. And a lot of elite athletes, UCI points were on the line. So I went and shot every, World Cup mountain biker, if you will,
Yeah.
on the course, just for the heck of it, just trying to, get images of these riders I look up to. And yeah, that was the goal. Just get images out there, collect what I could. I would make it a point to be the first one to DM photos right after the end of the race. And sure enough, that usually got me the first place on their Instagram after they, finish the race to post.
That's smart. It's interesting because you were saying like, what advice. I mean, people ask you advice like how do you get into media or content
Yeah.
or whatever. And
Mhm.
I was thinking about, just this conversation, and my thinking was like, there's probably no cookie cutter way of approaching it, and there's
No.
different ways. And it really sounds like your progression was very organic, but at the
Yep.
same time, there is some very simple things that helped you get to where you are, and it's
Sure.
putting yourself in those places
Yeah.
where you can get a job or get show off your talent as well.
Yeah.
Take some cool
Yep.
photos and be like, you got to be in the environment
Yeah.
that you want to eventually work in to make that work. So, I mean, in a way,
Yeah.
there is a model to get to where you want to be, or to
Sure.
do what you're doing.
Yeah, it's funny. It's really arbitrary, and there's no perfect answer. But same thing you said. Like when people ask me, "Oh, well, how do I get into shooting mountain bikes?" I'm like, "Well, do you ride mountain bikes? Okay. Do you shoot mountain bikes? You got to just go do the thing,
Yeah.
And sometimes that involves, maybe some risk. And I had jobs in the past and saved up money to get me to these places. I understand there is some sweat equity involved, and it may not always pay off. I would say more often than not, it doesn't pay off. Um, but when it does, you just slowly get your foot further and further in the door, and you talk to more and more people, and you kind of just become a name in your little niche, and it works well that way. But yeah, there's no like roadmap per se, but the most important thing is just being there. Um, I would always say early in the beginnings of my photographic career, it sounds weird saying that, if you will, but I'd be doom scrolling on Instagram and I'd follow all these people, and it's like, oh, why don't my photos look like this? They're so epic. My photos will never look like this. And then I did a 2 week camping trip in Iceland, and just got a bunch of friends together, split the cost, and suddenly I was in this place that looks otherworldly, like you're on Mars, and you start pointing your camera places, and it's like, oh, now my photos look like that because I'm here. Like it's, if you put yourself in those
Yeah.
positions, in those places, the rest of it kind of takes care of itself.
It's the same thing with any like storytelling or anything like that. Like if you don't have a good story, then no one
Yeah.
wants to listen to you. But like you
Yeah,
almost have to
right.
live, you have to put yourself in those situations
Yeah,
and have those experiences to have anything to even share.
totally.
So that makes a lot of sense. I do want to like talk more about what you're doing now, but
Sure.
before we move off of this kind of progression or the subject, did you find that you had a lot of support? I mean, it sounds like to be able to do what you're doing, and it sounds like you would need support from your parents, from like
Right.
your friends. Like, do you find that was pretty important to become what you've become today?
In like the early beginnings.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a conversation with my parents when I'm in high school. I'm like, yeah, I want to shoot mountain bikes for a living, and they'd be like, "What? Are you kidding me? Like, go,
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
but like, it's amazing to now. Like, it's a very, I'm sure,
Mhm.
and I don't mean to. I'm not sure how you feel about content creation as a like
Sure.
that term, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's a legitimate uh occupation now, is like creating
Yeah.
content, whether you like that term or not. But
Yeah.
back in the
No.
day, like I'm sure telling your parents you wanted to, be a even a photographer. I mean, I studied
Yeah.
music in college, and that was even
Sure.
like what the heck are you going to do with a music degree? Not much.
Exactly.
So like even
Yeah.
photography to a point, there's only so much you can do with it. And I'm just curious at how that,
Um,
I mean, how that went with like your folks, or even for you personally. Like,
Totally.
is this a legitimate path?
Yeah, that's a big can of worms to open, but I'll start by saying, yeah, my parents have supported the dream from the first day I ever told them I wanted the camera. Thankfully, it's the best thing ever. They always had my back. And it's the older I get now, the more I realize like how much of a, I don't want to say a gamble that might have been, but back in the day, I shouldn't say that, but not long ago, um, being a photographer or being, like you said, a content creator was more of a like, yeah, okay, like, kind of an arbitrary, like, yeah, some people get to do that, but not all, it's
Hmm.
like the age old, oh, I'm gonna be an artist. Like, yeah, okay, well, you're gonna be poor the rest of your life type thing. Um, but they always supported it from day one. They always were happy and willing to see what I could do with it. And I never knew if it was going to work out. It seems to be working out now. I still don't have it all figured out, despite what Instagram may look like. But yeah, the support system was always great. And then I didn't have the confidence for years, though, to like take people's money, if you will, from creating content. That was just something that always burdened me. It was like, are you sure like I can charge you for this? Like this is really a thing I just created out of thin air and you want to pay me money for it? Um, and then early on, it started like a very traditional photography path, I would say, like, oh, you like photography and you want to make money in it. So what do you do? Well, you go shoot weddings.
Yep.
So I spent 6 years shooting weddings,
Yep.
had nothing to do with mountain biking. And then any free time I would get, I would be shooting mountain biking for fun, for friends in hopes maybe I get a job here or there, right? Um, but I would say it wasn't until like many years of working halfway at Chipotle and halfway shooting weddings
Yep.
that I finally got the confidence to say, okay, if I don't do this full time, what else am I going to do? And I had no other answer. So it was definitely a moment of like, okay, I have to make this work. Like I have to find a way to make a soul living just with my camera. And that kind of lit the fire to give me the, I don't know, a little bit more confidence to say like, yes, I do charge for this. This is my rate. And this is the product you're going to get. And I'm the right guy for the job.
Yeah. Yeah. That totally makes sense. And, like, I'm sure maybe not now, but I'm sure that even that thought of like rate and, I mean, we live in
Yeah.
in kind of like a free world of like, people want
Yeah.
free photos,
Mhm.
people want, and
Mhm.
everyone can get things instantly for free now. So
Sure. Mhm. And everyone's
demanding,
a photographer.
and everyone's a photographer. Yeah. I mean, you have
Yeah.
one of the best cameras in your pocket, like right now.
Sure.
And then I'm sure there has to be I don't know, just something, it's got to be a little difficult to say, okay, no, I'm a professional and
Right.
this is my rate. This is what I charge. And I
Mhm.
don't give away, you wouldn't go to work and work all day for free. So
No.
I'm not going to also do the same thing. Um, but that's interesting. I mean,
And I preach that a lot. Like when newcomers ask me how to do it, and like sometimes the first question they ask me is like, "Oh, well, what do I charge?" And I kind of struggle with that at times because it's like, well, what have you done? I'm not going to tell you what I charge, and you should base something that you're
mhm,
doing off of that. Like it took me a really, really long time and doing a lot of work for free. And I'm not encouraging people to go work for free. Everyone's time should be valued. And I hate when companies, think just because you may be newer to this, you're not worth anything. But there is, I always use the term sweat equity. Like it kind of does, there is a bit of, pay to play. Like
yep.
there is a breaking in period where you may have to prove yourself and go on some of those trips and go to some of those races and present, what you're capable of. Just because you're not getting paid for it, it may pay dividends down the road.
Well, I mean, it's
Um,
it's kind of like you're saying, like taking chances, or,
yeah,
I mean, my guess is when you first met Alexey,
yeah,
um, some of that stuff, like he was kind of on the move up as well,
sure,
and I mean, it's like, and we can keep Alexey out of it, but it's like if you
no,
notice an opportunity, and maybe that opportunity doesn't pay dividends right away,
yeah,
maybe not charging as much then to
sure,
see something pay off in the long run, like
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
No, it's cool. Like Alexei's a perfect example, right? Like it was one harmless Instagram message years ago, just trying to get some photos. And now I'm talking to you. We just got back from the Olympics. Like it's
Yeah.
a weird when I had three clients at the Olympics, not because of him necessarily, but because of all these things we do in these relationships we made over the past 4 years. It just all comes full circle.
Yeah.
It's weird. Yeah.
So let's talk about what you're doing right now.
Sure.
And you said you had three clients at the Olympics. I know you work. I mean, now it's hand in hand with Alexey. So like,
Sure.
what? I mean, first of all, I said content creation. What how do you tell people, like, what do you tell people you do for a living? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask here.
This is a great question, and I've probably had to change my answer 6 times because um, in a world that's so crowded with, everyone's a photographer, if everyone's a filmmaker, everyone's a content creator, whatever you want to call it. I used to like hate the word photographer because it almost like had no validity to it anymore, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
tell someone you're a photographer and it's like, oh, okay, like what does that mean? Do you shoot senior portraits? Do you shoot National Geographic? Like what does that really mean? Um, I would say I've gotten over that now because it is what I do. I make money from a camera. So yes, I would say I'm a photographer, videographer. I don't put a high horse and say I'm a filmmaker or a cinematographer or whatever. I like making, I make money with my camera. And that's what it is. So yeah, photographer, videographer,
I like it.
jack of all
It's
trades.
yeah,
Yeah.
just simple. Don't
Yeah.
have to
Shoot a
read.
lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. Don't have to
Yeah.
read into it too
I
much.
don't I would never say I don't like saying I'm a content creator. To me, what that means is um, you found a way to make content make you money, but you don't consider yourself a photographer or a
Hmm.
videographer. There was no like build up in the craft. It's, almost content creation to me is becoming a very like gamified thing. So yeah, content creators to me it's not a bad thing by any
Yeah.
means. I just see people as, more so about their following or creating content.
I,
Um,
and I think it's important that the normal everyday layman understands maybe a differentiation between content
sure.
creation and true
Yeah.
photography. And
Mhm.
and like you said, it's not like you're not putting down content creation, but it is
Yeah.
essentially two different things. Um,
Yeah, I would say it is. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a hard line to define because there's sometimes like I would argue that two of my two of my clients at the Olympics, I was definitely creating content. There
Okay.
wasn't a ton of
Okay.
like deep thought or storyboarding into it. It was like purely personality, humor, some really fun stuff we were doing. You get paid a rate, you make an Instagram reel, and cut the check and on to the next one. Like to
Sure.
me, that's content creation. It's not that deep.
Yeah, and I guess like at this point where we are with Instagram or TikTok or
Hmm.
whatever, like um, those tools are still going to you're still going to use those tools to
Yeah,
get your photos out, get your videos out, but that's not necessarily the end all be all. Um,
right.
there's more, and maybe content creation. That is the point of it. Is
Yeah.
an
When I think
Instagram.
of content creation, I think of swiping. I think of scrolling.
Yeah.
I don't think of something you want to actually wait till you get home, sit on your couch, put up on a bigger screen.
Yeah.
That's something that means a lot more. Or in a theater or in a gallery. Like that's why I started. I mean, when I was young and you say I want to be a photographer, like you think about printing your images really big, or you think about putting something you made like a video up on a big screen and watching it. I used to work at a place called Camp Woodward, which is a pretty pivotal point in my career where we had a digital media camp um, full of action sports athletes, and we would make these little films as campers, following an athlete around, doing their BMX, doing their skateboarding, gymnastics, whatever you want. And we would screen it in front of 80 people inside this digital media lab. And the first time you got to see your work, if you will, even though looking back, it was awful videos. But you get to see it on the projector and it's 100 inches and people are watching it, and that's really special. And I never want to lose that type of thing, which is honestly, as the landscape has changed today, something I struggle with of, finding the line of what do I want to make that's just like far away content versus something that really means a lot to me.
Yeah. Do you find that you're striking that balance currently?
I would say currently no. Currently it's hard. It's hard in where the industry is. Specifically, like I work a lot in cycling, right? And there's not a lot of feature film stuff necessarily happening in cycling, right? And if there is, it wouldn't be enough to pay your bills. That's
Yeah.
for sure. So like I want to find time for those passion projects, and that's something I really want to work on with Alexey and I in the coming years, especially as we try to build our following on YouTube. It's been a really fun avenue lately. But yeah, it's hard to strike a balance because you want to pay bills and you want to be in the bike industry. And if you want to do that, usually it's pretty standardized content. It's a race weekend. It's this, it's that. It's a quick video. It's on to the next one. So it's finding time for those type of things that actually take a little more intent to create. I am doing that stuff though as well. Like
Yeah.
I'm shooting a campaign with one of Alexi's sponsors, Kenda Tire Company, for the launch of a new tire. Or I've shot launches for Envy,
Hmm.
bike launch with their road bike
Oh
and
yeah.
their gravel bike. So that stuff really lights my fire.
Sure.
That stuff that takes a little more time. But in the meantime, you gotta also get the nominal stuff out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you said you're working with three athletes at the Olympics. So
Mm.
what's your day to day like? How much time are you devoting to Alexey versus different athletes? Are you just like are are you just a contractor for all freelancer?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that kind of what you're doing?
Yeah. No, so I am freelance. A lot of the work that I do with Alexi, it's kind of funny because Alexi just became kind of the guy that I follow around everywhere, but I do have a life outside of Alexi. It just so happens that we get along really well. And we wanted to start making our own content, kind of showing a little bit of the behind the scenes of our lives and his racing and what I do for a living. And we started to get a really good response to that. Um, so we've been slowly building this thing over time. And then I'm always with Alexi, and his sponsors always need things. So it's kind of just naturally happens to where he goes, I go, and where he goes, there's things to get done. So everywhere we go, while it may look like a lot of play on the internet, there's actually quite a bit that goes into it.
Sure.
I think that's one thing that people discount is like content creators. If let's say we're making a YouTube video, I would call that content creation, just for fun. It's a lot of work. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's a horrific amount of work. And you go do these race weekends and you spend 5 days at the race pre and post, you film every day, you get home and have hours and hours and hours of footage in the timeline. And as you know, not to go on a rant here, but the way kind of media works now is if it's not immediate, no one cares anymore. Everyone forgets, right? If
Yeah.
if you just did Unbound and you shot for 5 days and you don't have an Unbound recap up in 24 hours, then
Yeah.
you lost the ship, right? You
Yeah,
lost the
yeah,
boat.
yeah.
I don't want to fall down into that wormhole of just like farting out content for the sake of farting it out. I don't think that there's longevity to that. I think that's how a lot of people experience burnout. So we are trying to do something a little different and maybe not be so concerned about the timeline, but a little more about quality. So that does take up a lot of my time with Alexi between his sponsors and then something that we're trying to build in our business. More so, we're kind of on ramping into what we would call a production company
Sure.
at the end of the day, with Alexi and I. And then on top of Alexi, I do take other clients here and there. So it just depends. It's usually still around cycling as of late.
Yep.
But in the past years, you name it, it's been other athletes will contact me because they know I'm so closely associated with Alexi, and I'll do stuff for other sponsors, you name it. I was graciously invited to do a big job at Mount Everest 2 years ago. I've worked with my good friend Ian McGrew. He's a phenomenal DP. and he's taken me on some of his shoots for, you name it, Land Rover, Outside TV, all
Oh
sorts
man,
of
yeah,
stuff. So I still get around when I can.
yeah, that's amazing. And
Yeah.
do you find like some of these other clients? I think you may have already answered this, but are you're getting some of these other clients because directly, like your work directly with Alexey,
Mhm.
um, or some of it's just because now you are now a trusted name in the industry as well.
Yeah. hmm Yeah, I think that's a thing. Like the association has been really important. And that, well, it's actually really funny. Some athletes will hit me up at races or even brands, and they assume sorry, I should rephrase that. They assume they can't contact me because I'm already there and I'm with Alexi,
Sure.
so I have no time for anything else. I'm like, no, that's not true. Like, I still want to be hired. Um, I'm still open for business. Like, Alexi doesn't have me locked away. We stay very busy, but Alexi likes to make sure I have time to also, get more income by doing other things for other people. So there is this like running joke in the industry I've heard many times from other athletes, whether it be Payson or Sarah Sturm, or they've always said like I need an Avery.
Yeah.
I need that guy that follows me around like you do. So it's definitely, I don't want to say like we've created a model, but I think there is this thing in cycling where there is this direct association now with like an athlete to his filmmaker,
Yeah.
and his guy. Yeah.
So that's so interesting because I this is something I did want to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, and from your perspective, like when we look at athletes like a Payson or a Sarah or an
Sure.
Alexi, like do you think we're getting to a point where they do need an Avery? Because the like Lifetime is expecting a certain brand when they're bringing these athletes into the series,
Yeah.
and or like and even if it's not Lifetime, it's going to be another thing, and
Sure.
just the way that social media and communication and all of this,
Mhm.
it's almost like you need a full time person with
Yeah.
you to tell your story as an athlete. So do you think
Yeah.
is that kind of the way it's becoming now, where athletes are going to get to a point where they
Yeah.
can't do it all themselves? It's going to be more so a distraction
For
from
sure.
actually training, and they're going to
Yeah.
need an Avery to help them out.
I think the best way to look at it is like if you can, it's an evil necessity, right? Like I'm sure if any athlete could have it their way, they would just ride their bike, they would just perform as an athlete, and they would go to bed at night, and Instagram would never come into their head. But as you know, and everyone knows, like that's not the landscape anymore. You can't just be an athlete. I mean, maybe if you're a world tour road cyclist, like yeah, that's their job,
Yep.
right? It's definitely not the same space, but what I find interesting is even shooting U.S. road nationals, something that I'm not associated with like the road scene at all. I don't really know much about it, and I was running around with my camera, and there's road cyclists there on UAE and EF who like know who we are, and they say they watch our videos, and they were making the joke like put me in the vlog, and it's interesting to see that it transcends even just beyond like off road riding right now in
Yeah.
America. Um, I do think if you can have an Avery, it's a really positive thing, not only for your personal brand, but all your sponsors. It's just probably hard to find a relationship that works like Alexi and I do.
Yep.
Um, for a lot of reasons, financially, time, you name it. We just have kind of a really interesting thing going, I think. Um, and we're trying to kind of show the behind the scenes of that. But I'm sorry, I'm not trying to deviate too much from your question here,
No,
but
no, no.
yeah, I do think it's important. Like, I sat down with Envy, even Alexi's title sponsor, while we were at Sea Otter, and I just kind of had a chat with their marketing guy, and he was even mentioning that the amount of people that come by the Envy booth and ask about what Alexi and I are doing and what that has done for his image as an athlete, but also just his direct association to a consumer product is a really impactful thing. Um, More so than we ever could have imagined, right? But we're finding this weird place now to where, Alexi's the elite athlete. And a lot of people are getting to know me too as his photographer, but maybe even more so, a little more relatable of a character in this crazy scene.
Yeah.
And I ride bikes too. I love riding bikes. And I find it interesting now that a lot of people are coming and asking me about bikes and equipment and stuff. And I'm always happy to, point them in the direction of people who support me, which also support Alexi. So it is interesting. We've gone and just made a funny YouTube video in Boulder in a day, and we were told that like two people bought a bike because of that. And
Yeah.
that's a big deal for a bike company.
Yeah,
If
no
you're
kidding.
if you're selling a $5,000 frame, based off two kids goofing off in Boulder, like I think there's some value to that. So it's not to be discounted to have someone consistently doing media for you and what that can do for your brand.
Yeah. I'm sure and I'm sure you recognize this. I'm sure Alexi recognizes like how much of a privilege it is to be able to be in a position to have an Avery. First of all,
Right. Yeah.
just financially, time,
Sure.
like you were saying.
Mhm.
But as you're saying this, it is different. The relationship is different, and that is communicated. That shows from, I mean, when I'm following you guys, but
Mhm.
it's not just you're just not the photographer telling Alexi's story.
Right.
The brand, I mean, you're as much of an integral part of the brand as Alex. So Alexi's the athlete. The
Sure.
brand is kind of what you've built together, and
You sure?
you're not just on one side of the camera. You are, but
Okay.
also the brand is bigger than that, and you've helped build this brand.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of going back to like what you do for a living.
So can I ask you, is that the way you see it? Because it's hard when I'm behind the camera, right, to see that like how much of a part of it I am. But every once in a while, like I'll be riding and someone will recognize me and say like, "Hey, why don't you put yourself on camera more?" And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't think people want to see that." It's like all about it's like I don't want to say it's like the Alexi show, but I'm so focused on like, telling the story of sport that I forget that like no, I'm equally the brand as he is now.
Yeah, and I don't want to say like not everyone thinks through this, but when I see
Sure.
it, I'm thinking, man, it is a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
and I kind of see like the two of you working side by side to get
Yeah.
these videos out, whatever out, and how much of a role you play in that. So
Right.
maybe I'm thinking more about it than the average YouTube consumer. Maybe
It's
not.
interesting.
I don't know, but
Yeah.
like I just see that
Hmm.
like there Alexi's got his dog and all this kind of stuff, and he has kind of
Sure.
built this brand, but also with you there, it's kind of one and the same.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like you said, you're maybe a little more relatable
Yeah.
in terms of just like a normal person instead of a world class athlete. But yeah,
Yeah, that's what people tell me. Sometimes I forget that it's like, yeah, Alexi's fun to watch for people who like really follow sport, but then like the guy behind the camera is a little more easy to talk to, maybe. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, one of my favorite moments, and I forget now what race it was, but it
Mm,
was when you were kind of thrown into the situation of you had to give the bottle hand up to Alexi,
mm.
and it's like, and
Yeah,
that's
Belgian waffle ride. Yeah.
Belgian waffle ride, and I think
Yeah.
that was the one where he won it, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
correct.
So
Yeah.
so I think that like really showcased how your relationship in this whole thing is not just I'm shooting
Right.
video and I'm shooting picture or shooting for pictures or whatever. It's like, no, this is more of a thing, and I'm very involved in the success of Alexi, but also the
Right.
success of the brand that you have helped build.
Yeah. It's actually funny you mentioned that because it's hard when you're in it to look at it from an outside view. But one thing that doesn't get mentioned enough is that like when I go to these events with Alexi, it's not just because I'm there to like shoot, just shoot the Alexi show. It's also like we just get along well. And when we travel together, like we're in the whole thing together. Like I'm not only just filming him, like we're eating dinners together, we're packing together, we're traveling nonstop together. And it takes probably a unique set of people to be able to handle that much time
Mhm.
together.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's funny because in that moment of Belgian waffle ride, I quickly realized like, hey, I'm here to tell a story. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to tell the story of, Belgian waffle ride, California. But also a part of that story is Alexei just missed two bottles and now he's in the desert alone. I need to actually like jump in and save him. And hopefully be able to film that as well, which I managed to do in that moment a couple years ago. But I think that's way more interesting than some slow-mo bike clips of Alexi pedaling through. It truly is a team effort to do what we do.
Right.
And it's not like a lot of, not to discount any other athletes, but uh, Alexi has a mechanic sometimes when NV can put it together to get his guy out there. But most of the time, like we're doing this all by ourselves. There's not much help.
Yeah.
We're really doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, not to like harp on this,
No.
uh, everyone could use an Avery, but
Mhm.
again, this is developed so organically. It sounds like, and that's kind of what I'm
Mm.
understanding, that not everyone can just hire an Avery. Not everyone just has someone like you can, but the relationship is not going to be the same as what you and
No.
Alexi have built in your friendship, in your like you trust one another, and then
Yeah.
out of that becomes like some really cool stuff that you guys have been
Yeah.
able to
I
build
think
together.
yeah, when you put it that way, it's interesting because I didn't hire him. He didn't hire me. We kind of hired each other and it just, it worked out. And now we're in this thing together that we can't seem to stop doing.
Yeah.
And we're interested to see where it's going to go from here. We have a lot of ideas and dreams, but I think there's something unique enough here to build something bigger out of, for sure.
Yeah. I think about um I think the stuff that you're doing, that like Ansel Dickey's doing, I think some of that stuff's like the most
Hmm.
interesting stuff in our industry right now. Yes, athletes are killing it. They're doing this, they're doing that, but without
Hmm.
people like you,
Right.
it doesn't really get showcased the way it should.
Yeah.
And that's a big reason why I just wanted to talk more with you and pick your brain and like
Yeah.
talk about content creation versus photography versus this versus
Yeah.
relationships with the athletes versus brands and building brands, and
Yep.
this is all like really important stuff, but um
Yeah.
there's
It's cool to see. Yeah.
yeah.
It's also cool to see now at races. We have a lot of talented people that are doing the same thing now. Or I shouldn't say the same thing. Like they're not trying to necessarily create a YouTube channel with an athlete, but like you go to the US race scene now, especially Lifetime Grand Prix, it's the same seven guys and girls shooting now. And it's a really cool community that we don't even question who's going to be where now because I know every Grand Prix race I go to, Danny's going to be there, Joshua's going to be there, Grace is going to be there. This media team is kind of like a big friend group now that is part of the traveling circus.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And do you think it's gonna is it harder now to differentiate yourself between, I mean, going way back to like everyone has a camera in their pocket, everyone, like, is
Mhm.
that because there's so much content out there, is it hard to stand out, or now are you finding it easier now in the position that you're in, that that's not really something that you're struggling against?
That's a really good question. I think I think it's getting harder to stand out every day because there's a lot of talented people out there now. I mean, there always was, but I think there's more and more talented people than ever who are like in this sport and then in the even more niche like US off-road racing. Everyone kind of wants a piece of the pie. So I think it's important to try to stand out, even if I don't know if that's just in like your camera style or the way you film things. Um, there's a lot of people out there doing similar things and a lot of people out there doing different things. But I think our greatest asset that Alexia and I have is this kind of duo relationship. And that's what does stand us out, this direct association with each other. I mean, I remember being at Unbound when Alexei wasn't, and I was shooting for Envy still, and other clients, and people just like couldn't comprehend that I was there, but Alexei was not. And they were like, "Well, what are you even shooting then?"
You're like, guys, it's
Yeah,
I can survive without Alexey. I mean,
I still have other things to do, right? Um, so yeah, to I guess to answer that, yeah, it is getting hard to stand out, but I'll always say like a lot of newcomers ask me like, oh, should I even bother getting into the industry? Is it too crowded? Is it too crowded?
sure.
And I hate that way of looking at it because like I think everything is too crowded now. I don't care if you're a photography or you're an electrician or you're a plumber. Like, dude, everything's crowded. But I don't think the bicycle industry specifically is too crowded with enough people doing great work. I think there's a lot of people that do good work, but there's still room for people that are doing phenomenal work and doing something different. So I think there's always room. You just gotta do something better.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great answer to that. I like it.
Yeah.
Um, all right. I got to ask you about Tour Divide. I mean, so
Oh
you
yeah.
have this like, you're shooting all this cool stuff. You're telling other people's stories, but then
Sure.
I think an important part of who you are, it seems like,
Sure.
you're racing Iceman, you're racing Sea Otter,
Hmm.
and you're going on your own adventures. And
Sure.
so tell me a little bit about, was it a Tour Divide attempt? I don't mean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we'll call it that. That's all right. I've recovered mentally from it, so I can say it was an attempt. That's good.
Yeah, let's talk about. I mean, this year, right? You left earlier in the spring, or was it early summer?
March, would have been June.
June.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always say like people don't see me ride bikes a lot because when they see me, it's at an event and I'm always following someone else riding a bike, in a car, shooting out of the back, whatever it be. But I do love riding bikes. I love riding bikes a lot. And I try to make time every year to pick one big event to do. Iceman will always be there at the end of the year. I'll always race Iceman. No matter where I live, I will fly home for that race. But so last year I did Leadville. Um, prior year. Oh yeah, I did Tusher as well for
Okay.
preparation for Leadville. I make my point is I make time to pick off one big event every year to give a crack myself, and actually hopefully get the time to train for it as well. Um, and I've always dreamed of doing the Continental Divide. It's just always been something that was super inspiring to me. I've never bike packed. I've never done anything of that magnitude in my life. I just know I did a Leadville last year, so I'm like, cool, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. I know I can do hard things. So let me just give this one
What's
a go.
what's like
Yeah.
2,000 more miles or so?
Yeah,
Isn't it like
what's 2,600 more miles, you know? Yeah, something like that. And I was really inspired by Lachlan's ride the prior year. And then just before he moved out of Boulder, I was over at his place and he graciously gave me a bunch of his bike packing bags from the Divide. So
Oh wow.
when he gave me that stuff, I was like, okay, I gotta give this a go. Like,
Sure.
there's no excuse now. I have the equipment. I don't have to ask many people for any favors. Like, let's just give it a go. And then my good buddy Colin, who lives in Marquette, Michigan, who I kind of did all my first like long distance ride with. We did our first centuries together on the mountain bike. We knew we did well together on long days, and he's kind of the expert bike packer now. And when I asked him about doing the Divide, he was like all in, no problem. So it took 2 years of like misplanning and couldn't do it. And then this year I just somehow found a gap in the calendar that I had 30 days. And I was like, I think this is it. Like we have to go do this thing. Like let's just give it a go. So um I was literally working up to the night prior flying out to Canada. Um and I hastily, very unpreparedly, got all the equipment together with not much planning, thanks to Colin for handling all the logistics. And before I knew it, we were on a plane to Canada.
Wow. And just tell me a little bit more about like just the experience itself.
Yeah,
How far did you get?
totally. Yeah, yeah. So we started in for those I shouldn't assume everyone knows what the Continental Divide is,
Yeah.
but for some backstory, it's a 2,700-ish mile ride from Banff, Alberta, straight down the Continental Divide to Mexico. Um, and like I said, we had a 30-day gap. So to do this thing, maybe a day or two on each. And once you calculated that, it was pretty much riding 100 miles a day for 30
Oh
days,
goodness.
which is absolutely ludicrous. But I knew that if I just stick to it, like I just want to see what happens. And and it was probably one of the most inspiring things I've ever done in my life. It was really interesting. I was probably the most nervous I'd ever been to do something athletically, mentally, physically. I felt the most imposter syndrome I ever had in my life because I'm normally just the camera guy, right? And like, sure, I do a big race here and there, but like, this is crazy. Right across the country. Like, I have no business doing this, but I was so committed to it that we got on the plane and did the thing. And then it turns out the easiest part was just pedaling.
Hmm.
All the nerves went away as soon as we left our hotel in Canada because suddenly things become easy when your only job is to eat and pedal.
Sure.
Like there was no one to talk to other than my riding mate Colin. And once you got your camping setup pretty dialed, and we stayed in hotels most of the nights. That was really important. But yeah, it's there's something beautifully simple about getting up every day and your only job that day is just to ride your bike and eat and survive.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was the coolest thing ever. Starting in Canada, only a couple days to the U.S. border, and then we pushed on there. I would say we averaged about 100 miles a day once it all shook out. Just over 700 miles in 7 days. Unfortunately, right near Butte, Montana, my knee completely gave out. Um, and just I imagine overuse. I've never ridden a century every day for 7 days, let alone my bike weighed like 60 pounds,
Right.
50 pounds.
Right.
And there was just so much hike biking and just really rough terrain. And my knee just got so inflamed after my saddle kept slipping and so on and so forth. And I'd fix it and move my cleat here and adjust my height here. But finally, on a really horrendous downhill hike, my knee just buckled out from under me. And I knew that I could be stubborn and push on, but I didn't know the severity of the injury. And I know if you push past knee injuries, it might ruin your whole summer. And I wasn't willing to do that.
Yeah. That could stay
So
with you for the rest of your life too. So you don't want
yeah,
to.
exactly.
Yeah.
I know knees are not something to mess with. And thankfully, it all ended up okay. And once
Yeah.
I got home, I got scans done, and they just said it was horrifically inflamed.
Hmm.
My meniscus was pretty angry at me. But
I mean, I think that's a pretty typical story of the Tour Divide, though,
hmm,
is like attempting and failing and trying again and working
yeah,
through and figuring out, dialing in those details. I'm not sure how one prepares, like you don't train 100 miles a
no,
day that way. So it's
no, I was actually really nervous about that, and my training leading up to it, which was nothing. I didn't train at all. I had never even put a tent on my bike.
well, maybe it's somewhere in between 100 miles a
Yeah,
day for 3 months and zero.
yeah. I would say all the training for the divide comes years prior of cycling, and just you being used to understanding what those dark places may feel like and what you're capable of, despite it maybe feeling really hard. It's going to be okay. That's the biggest thing because there was a lot of days that were pretty hard, but you've been there before, right? Like you can get past those hard bits. There's no I mean I would say your setup is the thing to train for the divide. You're gonna
Yeah.
ride into fitness. I was really proud actually. Come day 6, 7 of riding 100 miles, my legs were actually great. And sure enough, I talked to friends and they're like, "You're gonna ride into the fitness on the divide. Your body will finally understand what's happening, you know, once you get a week into that thing." And
Yeah.
that's true. So despite the injury, Um, yeah, everything else felt great. I'm really excited to go do it again. I
That's
don't know when, just based off other things I'm trying to build right now and career and life wise. And it's a big time ask out of your year
mm-hmm.
um, to do that. And I wouldn't go as fast. I would change a lot. Um, you get you're so deep in this industry for so long, and I'm used to being around the most mutated, ridiculous athletes. So you become a little jaded to how what's normal. And we were doing 80 to 100 miles a day, and we would get to our next rest stop and we would tell people what pace we were on, and they couldn't believe it. They said, "You're going so fast." And I'm like, "No, we're not. Like, this is slow. Look at all these people. Look at all these dots we're watching. They're doing 180, 200 miles a day plus." And so it's good to remind yourself that, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, we're normal people, and that's still a pretty epic effort,
Yeah.
you know, do that.
That's cool. And I mean, you were saying it was one of the most inspired experiences you've had. And it
Yeah.
sounds like it's inspiring you to do it again and, be in that, be in that situation. Cause man, I love that. I love the idea of getting up and all you have to do is pedal your bike. I mean,
Yeah.
for day after day after day, like
Yeah.
that seems like a pretty unique experience
Yeah.
to be in, and it's definitely something. As hard as it is in the moment, you remove yourself from that moment, and you
Yeah.
just want to be back there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the wound was still pretty sore, when I left the divide. I was mainly just like filled with anger, right? Because you
Sure.
you you planned so much for this and you spent so much time thinking about it, and even financially, like, it was a big ask. I fully built out a new bike for this, and you also tell a lot of people you're doing this, and people are watching you,
Yeah.
and people are texting you every day and following your dot, and we had support from sponsors, and it's kind of hard to swallow that.
Mm-hmm.
I sympathize or empathize, whatever, more with athletes now when they have these awful race days, why they do this big long sappy Instagram post. It's like, oh, I get it now. Like, this is what it feels like to
Yeah.
not perform, if you will, even
Sure.
though I'm just an average person. um but yeah, it was truly one of the most inspiring things I've done, and just the landscapes, the people you meet, the everyone on that route knows exactly what you're doing, and that's really cool. It's no secret when bikes are in town at that time in
Yeah.
those towns. People support you like no other. And I can't wait to go back. Definitely would need probably like 40 to 50 days to really enjoy it.
Man, that's a long time though.
And that's the thing is, again, I'm very privileged and fortunate to be in a job to where I can carve out that time if I really want to.
Mm-hmm.
But I might need a year off or so before I get back out there, and
Yeah.
maybe bring Alexey along for part of it.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Have him do the film and pictures and put a camera on
That
his.
yeah, that's funny. That's actually the video we want to make most right now, for our YouTube channel. Is I do the riding and completely swap jobs with Alexi. He follows me around for 4 hours in the car and has to try to shoot me while driving and routing.
And
I think that'd be a good.
see what kind of quality comes out of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll see how hard it actually is. Yeah.
Avery, man, this was awesome. This is perfect.
Yeah.
I appreciate you carving out time in your busy schedule. And
No, dude, this is great. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm glad it finally worked.
no need to apologize. This is really cool. And congratulations on what you've done in the last few years and
Thanks,
built
man.
up yourself. And it's cool to follow you. I mean, just like even the story of like, yeah, I was over at Lachlan's house and he gave me these bags. I'm like, man, you are living the dream. It's so cool. So congratulations on the work you put in and really reaping those benefits right now. And I look forward to
Yeah.
like seeing what else you do down the line.
Yeah. And for those who are wondering, Alexi and I are trying to build out our YouTube channel to something very full time. That is what we want to do, dare I say, for a living. It sounds crazy to do that, but like you said, the landscape has changed and anything's possible. So, um, come time when maybe racing dies down a little bit or whatever, we really want to come in full swing and making these videos.
Very
So,
cool. Yeah. Look forward to it.
yeah.
Well, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Talk to you real soon.
The Dirty Chain Podcast is a Michigan Midpack Media production in partnership with KOM Cycling, the source for your bike accessories and necessities. Connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Dirty Chain Podcast. If you are enjoying the podcast, please leave us a rating and review on whatever platform you use to listen. Audio editing and original music by myself, Trevor Gibney. A huge thank you to Avery for joining us on this episode, and thank you all for listening to the Dirty Chain Podcast. And as always, keep your chain clean, but get your chain dirty. We will see you in the Midpack.